Hi, this is ESPN's Dave Lamont, and you're listening to the Sports Objective Podcast, the unofficial podcast of the Pirates.
Welcome to the Sports Objective, a very special night. Anytime we can have our first guest on, one of our dear friends, one of the original guests way back a few years ago, and we talk to him just a few minutes. But first off, I want to give a shout out to a former linebacker under the Logan era in the 1990s. We're not going to call him old because we're about the same age. He's a couple years younger. That's Matt Semenza. Brother, what's up?
What's going on, man? Excited about tonight. Definitely I'm feeling a little younger, Dave, now that football season's coming around. Like every year it makes me feel like I'm 25 again. But yeah, so I'm excited about tonight, guys. Some really good guests. Have a chance to preview 3 different teams. So it's going to be action-packed tonight.
Yeah, and by the way, tomorrow night, this is an inside thing for me. The big rival game, our high school is playing the rival high school, County High School, tomorrow night. And Brian Pascal, that's been on our show, friend of the show, friend of ours, they're taking on the rival. So they won last week against North Pitt 14-8. So it's like I've got my son's age group. They've got a huge turnout. Middle school went well last year. The high school is already doing well. You've got the Pirates looking better. I don't know how the Washington Commanders, will see about that. But anyway, I'm excited for football across the board. Bubba Rosenbaum, dude. How are you, my friend? Great to have you, as always, producing behind the scenes. He's like, wouldn't you call him, Matt, the Oz of TSO, the Sports Objective?
Yeah. Now, Dave, there for a second, I thought we were filming Dude, Where's My Car? But no, great to be talking some football as always, and a triple header of sorts tonight. First of all, we'll go ahead and announce the lineup. Chad Brendel from Bearcat Journal, and then Jeff Allen from the Knightline Sports Network and the AAC Report, and then to wrap things up, we'll have Frank Murtaugh. He's a first-time guest on the show. He's from the Memphis Magazine and also the Memphis Flyer. He's been covering the Tigers, or at least covering various topics in Memphis, both professional and collegiately, for about the last 3 decades or so.
So what you're putting the pressure on Chad, so he's like the leadoff hitter, so he's got to at least reach base maybe on a hit by pitch or a walk. But we'll get to him in just a second.
No pressure. Hey, Chad.
No pressure.
We've had Chad on numerous times, and he does an excellent job covering UC.
No doubt. We'll get to him in just a second. But Chad, hang on there just a second. Catch your breath just a second, because we have breaking news right here on the Sports Objective. And it's not about the Pirates or the Bearcats, but for TSO, the Sports Objective. And Bubba, if you want to do the honors now, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, beginning next week, which is obviously game week for the Pirates, we will have, as you see on the screen right now for our viewers, a lot of new programming headed your way. You'll have the familiar programs like the Pirate Preview, also. The Pulse of Pirate Nation is something we've done in the past on game days. The Pirate Football Playback. So some familiar programming there, but we have on Monday, Absolute Empowerment with longtime East Carolina strength and conditioning coach Jeff Connors, who spent 18 years, I believe it was, with ECU over 2 stints. On Wednesday, we have Pirate Breakdown with Sutton Young, who is still an East Carolina student, but also has a tremendous amount of experience in the industry. He works a full-time job for WITN. So really look forward to hearing from Sutton every Wednesday. We'll have Jay Sunhalter and Matt Semenza on Sunny and Semenza each and every Wednesday night. Sometimes that will be live, sometimes it will be recorded. And then on Thursday nights, we'll have the Inside Slant. We'll not only talk Pirate football, but that's a show on which, the four of us will talk a variety of college football topics, take a look at the previous week's games, and take a look at what will be taking place on that upcoming Saturday. And then also we'll have a Pirate's Life for me, which is kind of a pirate profile, be it a current or former student East Carolina University in some way, shape, or form.
No doubt about it. Very excited, and something that Bubba and I have our vision. I know Matt has supported us big time too on this, and Kyle as well. And we're sending a shout out to Kyle, as I know he's a little bit under the weather, but I know he'll be watching and listening the show for sure tonight. And appreciate Kyle very, very much, and look forward to that's going to be fantastic. So there you have it. That starts on Monday with Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors, who he's one of the only coaches, Bubba, who is actually one of the strength and conditioning coaches in a Hall of Fame, right?
He is. I think he's one of something like 15 or 20 collegiate strength coaches to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that is the USA Strength and Conditioning Hall of Fame. And he has a couple of tremendous shows to kick things off. Larry Shannon, Leonard Henry, and Mike Swift, 3 East Carolina football letter winners on that initial show, talking about their Pirate careers and specifically playing NC State, since that's the opener. And then on show 2, I know Pirate fans are going to enjoy this, and they always enjoy hearing from Coach Logan. So former East Carolina head coach and the program's all-time winningest coach in terms of number of victories, and that's Steve Logan.
That's going to be fantastic. So that'll start this coming Monday. So look forward to that with Absolute Empowerment with former strength and conditioning coach for East Carolina, and that is Jeff Connors. But we're this right now, very excited, a man that's still involved with Cincinnati with the Bearcat Journal, 24/7 Sports, Chad Brendel. Chad, welcome back to the show, man. Glad to have you.
Thanks, man. It feels like a rite of passage in fall. You guys invite me on, and then we talk a little Bearcats and ECU, and I've had a great time with it over the years. Happy to still be around and still be on Bubba's speed dial for when you need me, and glad to be here.
It's so much fun, with you guys. We were talking about. I had a friend of mine yesterday. She was talking about that. Where's the summer gone? And I said, well, the one thing that I love about the fall, starting off with the weather, of course, but certainly football. I mean, my gosh, if you're a real sports fan, this is a tremendous time of year. Plus, if you love like NASCAR, they've got the playoffs. You've got playoffs coming up for MLB. And of course, also Matt and I love the NBA and college basketball we've got coming up. So, and hockey. How could I forget hockey with I'm a Carolina Hurricanes fan. So a tremendous time right now with sports. And Chad, with let's talk obviously with Cincinnati. Let's get your take, your breakdown, and you have a very tough assignment. I just feel really sorry for you, as I told you in the green room, covering them. As a journalist, I mean, you've got like all these perks that I don't know how many people would love a free lunch. How about you, Matt? Would you like to have a free lunch?
Oh, no doubt about it, man. Cincinnati's got it going really good up there these days, and definitely some perks for Chad, right?
I mean, if they're going to offer a free lunch, I'm going to take it. Like that's a media rite of passage, right?
Exactly.
Like if you're in the media and somebody's like, "Hey, you want some food?" The answer is always yes.
They give you a free T-shirt, so you give you a T-shirt and some swag, and they'll give you a free lunch, and you're like, "Yeah, we'll cover it." Well, it's tiddlywinks for East Carolina. Bubba and I will be there, and Matt will be. I'll be the sideline reporter. The two of y'all can do the game. And for tiddlywinks, and they're like, yeah, "We'll feed you." I'm like, "Okay, even if it's a sport we know nothing, if it's a sport we know nothing about, we'll still cover it, right, Matt?"
That's right. That's exactly right.
Hey, now, Dave, very quickly, kind of a quick sidebar to that, as far as accepting free food, like Chad was saying, and the answer always being yes. Remember, here in the last several years, it may have been maybe the end of the Scotty Moe era, but Stephen Igo of Hoist the Colors went up to UConn to cover a game, and they served him. The cooler had a canned Coke maybe that was several months out of date.
That sounds about right. That sounds exactly like the UConn football budget.
Yeah,
the story
exactly.
matches up.
Wait a minute. I don't want to offend Matt Simmons. That's his like sister program, I think, that he loves so much because he's right up.
Fair enough.
Sorry,
Fair.
Matt. I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't mean we don't want to offend you on that.
Oh, hey, UConn football. No offense taken, fellas. No offense taken.
Hey,
it's one of those programs like when they show up in recruiting, if it's like, UConn offered, you're like, well, we gave it a good run.
That's right.
Now, Matt,
right.
didn't they have, was it like $15 this year? It was something ridiculously low.
Season tickets.
The season. Oh yeah, you could get season tickets for like $75 or something. It was ridiculous.
Okay, because maybe it was just for a short period of time. I thought it was something. I mean, that's ridiculously low, but I thought it was just mind-boggling low, like what you would normally pay for a cheap ticket for one game. But maybe
that's the cost for. Hey guys, that's the cost for the NC State game for us, right? For home opener on September 3rd. And you can get the state game, or you can just drive north 95 and you can hang out with Semenza, and you can go up there every Saturday for a home games with UConn. I mean, it sounds like to me, what would you rather go to the NC State? Chad, would you rather come to us and hang out with us at a great tailgate? NC State, a top 25 program, top 15 program, East Carolina, it's like our biggest rival, or UConn Huskies football you got to go there every Saturday, like a season ticket holder.
You couldn't pay me to go to UConn.
How do you really
forget me? You couldn't forget me paying you. You couldn't pay me to go up there and watch a game at that place.
I hear you, man. I hear you. I agree. But
their basketball. What's crazy about that program is the pride that those fans have. When you look at basketball, baseball is pretty good. It's decent, and I'm sure some other sports I don't even know. And why that football program, when they keep talking about how they deserve to be a Power 5 program, I'm sorry, but that right there should tell you why you shouldn't be a Power 5 program. That's just my opinion.
I've got no problem with UConn, and like Danny Hurley is one of my best friends in the entire sport of college basketball. Like Danny's my guy. I love Danny. Danny, actually, what people don't know, Danny is a diehard Cincinnati Bengals fan. Diehard. And so whenever I see Danny on the road at like an AAU tournament or whatever, he knows I do radio here. So I cover the Reds, Bengals, Bearcats, all that. So whenever he sees me, it's like 90 minutes of who do you think's going to be the backup punter? What are they going to do for the long snapper? Are they going to take 5 wide receivers or 6 this year? I'm like, I don't know, man.
Hey, wait a minute. Does that mean that we can all go to a Bengals game? Do you have any pull there, Chad, that you get us some tickets for a Bengals game?
The NFL's weird about that stuff, especially now. It used to be fairly, I don't want to say easy, but now it's like there's 50 million hoops to jump through to get credentialed for NFL now.
Yeah. No, it's funny because and it's funny too, I guess Cincinnati now will be a really tough ticket to get this year, right?
Yeah, the Bengals are, it was much easier even halfway through last year, because really, I mean, they were right around 500, most of the season, and then hit a little spurt at the end of the season to get into the playoffs. But yeah, that's a tough ticket. I think they had 60,000+ for the first preseason game.
Wow.
So that's going to be a difficult ticket.
Hey, Chad, just to kind of jump in here on the Bearcats, first, before we kind of get into this season, I just had a question looking back to the playoff last year in the game versus Alabama. And I'll tell you, for the first time in my life, I found myself a little defensive of Cincinnati, maybe because we're conference mates or we were conference mates, but I felt very irritated by the national media because, after Cincinnati lost to Alabama, the narrative was, oh, we told you so. A team from the group of 5 can't come up and compete with the SEC. That was the narrative. But we all know in reality, I thought Cincinnati, they didn't really convert in the red zone. I thought they played a decent game, not at their best, but 90% of the teams in college football would have lost a lot worse, including SEC teams. So I didn't like the narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think it's, typically those narratives are very lazy. Like they're not informed. They're not researched. People will look at the first drive and a half that Alabama had and just say, oh, Cincinnati got pushed off the ball. They got mauled. And that first drive, they definitely, like, Alabama had a great game plan. They obviously had watched a bunch of film on Cincinnati last year, whose only weakness on defense was that they could give up long, time-consuming drives on the ground. And, of course, Nick Saban said, okay, why would we throw at Ahmad Gardner and Kobe Bryant? Why would we even try that when we can just run at you? But if you watch the rest of the game, Cincinnati held them in check for the most part. And they weren't able to just march the ball right up and down the field. And, they had – I think that game goes entirely different if Cincinnati gets that touchdown on their first drive. They had a ball batted down at the line of scrimmage in the red zone on first down or on second down. And then Alec Pierce went up and had one go through his hands on third down, and they had to settle. I think if you get 7 there, all of a sudden it's game on, and they just never – if they had the Alabama muffed a punt inside the red zone that Cincinnati couldn't turn into a touchdown. It was just a couple minor adjustments, and Cincinnati makes that thing, interesting to the wire. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, they couldn't capitalize, and Alabama is Alabama. So they turned a 1-score game into a 17-point game in pretty, short order in that fourth quarter, and made it look like it was much less of a contest than it was. But I guarantee you go ask those Alabama kids if Cincinnati pushed them, and they'll absolutely tell you, yeah, they gave us everything we could handle.
And Chad, what's so crazy about that whole thing, and I agree with Matt, is that, and Bubba and Kyle, is the fact that the sport, all of us right now on this show want the sport to grow, right? Yeah. There's no question. Guess how the sport can grow? Great stories like Cincinnati. And we, when we're on the field with you guys, we want to win the game. But outside, we know the fact of the matter is that this sport can grow when great people, great teams like Cincinnati, UCF that were in our conference. The days, Matt, years ago, guys with like Boise State. I tell you another team to look out for is this year. Don't overlook BYU. They may be another team. I know they're going to the Big 12 with you guys, a future conference mate. But I'm just really frustrated with how much I love college football. Can you imagine the drama of, like, if, for example, with us now with American, if they have the conference champions in there, I'm telling you guys, put the conference champions in there. So with Pirate fans, it drives me crazy. A sidebar really fast. I heard this at the luncheon. I forgot to tell you, Bubba, by the way, Matt, and our group text. It drives me crazy when I hear Pirate fans say that they're excited about NC State, but they didn't mention Cincinnati, but other teams that are in the American, they don't get excited about. Look, when we love Pirates so much with the football that they can be playing I don't care who, and I'm going to be there supporting them. And yes, it's great when we have the likes of a great team like Cincinnati to play in November, or the NC States like this coming up Labor Day. But it's just really frustrating when I hear that. And I'm going, okay, if you have a college football playoff that has a conference champion, and you know that a team, let's say, I'm just throwing this name out here, like Tulsa or Houston this year, whoever, because we're getting ready to play them, or if it's the last game of the year, I think it's at Temple. If that game came down to Temple in East Carolina, to go to the conference championship game, you don't think that would be ratings galore, or and then the conference champion, that game would be big time, because then, if that champion would go to the playoffs. So I just don't understand how they don't see that would create more money. It creates more inventory for multiple networks. I mean,
that's
I could
the thing
go on.
You always hear it, if you expand the playoffs, it cheapens the regular season. What?
Yeah, exactly.
What? More teams being involved in the race for a championship cheapens. There's a reason that the NFL doesn't have a 4-team playoff.
Right.
It's because the more teams you have competing for the championship, the more interesting all of the storylines are. I just like it's stuff like that that's really lazy, and frankly, it's kind of annoying because I just think people. It's so weird that like in college basketball, we love the Cinderella.
Yes,
right. We
The
talk
whole
about this all the
sport
time.
love the Cinderella, and in college football, you're not a blue blood. Get out. You don't belong.
yeah.
Get off my lawn. Get out of my yard, kid. It's like that Cincinnati team. What wasn't likable about that Cincinnati team last year? They had a great quarterback, one of the best defensive players to play college football in years, I think, in Ahmad Gardner. You have a head coach that's universally liked. Like I getting to know Luke over the past 6 years, there's nothing not to like about that man and support the way that he does things, the way that he builds his program, the way that he treats his kids. Like what was there not to like about Cincinnati other than they didn't, hit it or whatever they didn't they were born on third base and thought they hit a triple. Like that's
Right,
the blue blood hierarchy in college football.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's
crazy.
the thing about, and Matt, to add to that, I absolutely love College Game Day, but the thing that drives me crazy is Herb Street, some of these others. I know he's an Ohio State guy, the Ohio State, but the reality is there's a lot of good teams, like I said, like Cincinnati, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse because everybody on the show probably agrees with us and how we feel. But let's talk about the current season of Cincinnati. Tell us about camp. Tell us that struggles you had at camp out there. I have a question for you, by the way. I'm going to put you on the spot. I know Matt likes horror movies. Did you see Jason out there in the woods? You were talking about the woods earlier.
No, but they just put a video up on the official UC account. They like to pull pranks out there, the video team. So they had the woman that runs the video department dress up in a clown suit and go door to door through like the dorm, like where all the players stay. And like
Pennywise?
It kind of looked like kind of similar. Yeah. So like, they've got a couple tight ends that are headed to the NFL next year. And she was just standing in their room when they walked into their room after night meetings in the clown outfit with the camera running. And then, they had her hide in the shower of one of the strength coaches. And he opened the shower curtain and there she was and popped out of the shower. They had her hide in a ghillie suit, like, because they're out in the middle of nowhere. And she would jump out at the guys in a ghillie suit as they were walking out of the weight room. So they like to mess with the guys out there because it is. So basically it's about 40 minutes from downtown Cincinnati, right on the Ohio-Indiana border. You go to the first exit in Indiana off the interstate, and then you wind about 7 or 8 minutes into the middle of the woods, into the middle of nowhere. And then you go down over a bridge and up a hill and back around a corner. And all of a sudden there's this giant facility that's where they go for 2.5, 3 weeks every summer.
Hey, Matt, doesn't it seem like you're from Jersey? Doesn't it seem like when if you were riding on that in the middle of nowhere, that the road is curving like that's your last hour or so on Earth, because it sounds like a mafia hit to me.
Yeah, it definitely does. It does sound like a horror movie for sure. But so Chad, I wanted to ask you, just kind of looking at Cincinnati, Desmond Ridder was so good at extending drives with his feet. Yeah. And, you look at that East Carolina game last year, and he killed us on third down. I mean, there were numerous times we had Cincinnati in third and long, and guess who made a play with his feet? Yep. Whether it was just getting out of the pocket and making a throw or just extending plays downfield. Talk to me a little bit about the quarterback position this year. Who's looking like, the starter, and how do you feel about that position?
So do you guys remember Ben Bryant?
Ben Bryant. The name sounds familiar.
So Ben Bryant in 2019 and 2020 was Desmond Ridder's primary backup.
Yeah, he went.
He went to Eastern Michigan. Mm-hmm. Started at Eastern Michigan last year and then transferred back to Cincinnati this offseason. He's been competing with Evan Prater. Prater is kind of a younger, like a recreation of Desmond Ridder when Des was, coming up. More athletic. Ben Bryant is more of a pocket passer, big arm, can make all the throws. Prater has a really good arm, a little bit more inconsistent with his arm, but he can hurt you a lot more with his feet. So the two of them have been competing. If I had to guess, I would guess Bryant wins the job. But they split reps at the scrimmage this past Saturday. So Fickell is playing it very close to the vest. If they've made a decision, they're not tipping their hand, and nor should you going into a game at Arkansas to open the season. If you've got two completely different style of quarterbacks, you just go ahead and let Arkansas have to prepare for whichever one it's going to be. But Bryant's got the experience. You know, he's got 14 starts under his belt. He throws a really good ball, and this is a team that has a lot of talent at wide receiver and tight end. So I think you might be wise to go with the guy that's a little bit better in the pocket, delivering, good passes on time and on target, at least early in the season, as you kind of maybe let both of them work their way into, the season.
Hey, Chad, before we dive too much further into the offensive roster, just the program as a whole, along these lines as personnel, take a look at, and you had 9 Bearcats drafted, which was a program record. The previous record was 6, and only Georgia and LSU, as you see there on the screen, had 15 and 10, and more than UC.
So obviously, when you lose Ahmad Gardner, and he's the most dominant player in UC football history. Sauce was just even with a veteran quarterback like Holton Ahlers, ECU came in that game saying, we're going to test him. I think they threw 2 balls over there earlier in the game and never went back. And there's a reason. It's because the guy was never open that he was guarding. So he legitimately shut down half the field. And a lot of that too, that changes that safety that's over top of him. If that safety that's over top of him never has to help, you've got an extra guy in the box that you can, use to cover tight ends and running backs and blitz. And he just changed everything for Cincinnati. So I think they're still going to be good at corner and safety, where you lost Ahmad Gardner, you lost Kobe Bryant, you lost Brian Cook, who was a second-round draft pick by the Kansas City Chiefs, and then Bryant went to the Seahawks in the 3rd. There's obviously going to be a learning curve or a build back up on the experience, because those guys played almost every snap, right? Arquan Bush, who is the returning veteran in that cornerback room, he's an outside corner. They had to move him to nickel just because he wasn't going to ever see a snap with Kobe and Sauce on the edges. So there's going to be an adjustment. The question will be how long that adjustment takes. But there's the way Luke Fickell is recruited. I mean, they've been the top G5 program, I think, 3 out of the last 4 years in recruiting. The way he's recruited, they're going to be talented. The question is, how long does it take that talent to build up the experience and the ability to do it every snap in every game like you knew those veteran guys could do? But, I mean, it's unprecedented how much walked out the door. What's surprising is, as you go through camp, you see guys stepping up into those roles and becoming more and more of a factor. So, and that's not even, Alec Pierce and Jerome Ford. Alec Pierce, a second-round pick to the Indianapolis Colts. Jerome Ford is having a great camp with the Cleveland Browns. When you really go back over those roster and you start looking at, okay, what are these guys doing early in their NFL debuts? And all of them are flashing to let you know what? That wasn't just Cincinnati was really good, so a lot of guys got drafted. That was Cincinnati had a lot of guys that could play at any level. Now the question is, are there the talent is there to replace them? The question is, are they ready to step on the field when the bright lights come on? And you're 2 years ago, that the game where Holton Ahlers had lost his mind and threw for 5,000 yards and 26 touchdowns against the Bearcats. Are you able to go and have a game like that where you're not at your best and still win? Can you gut it out? That's what the question is going to be for this next group of guys that are coming up.
No question. And
you go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I had it on mute, and I should know by now to not have it on mute if I want to talk. Chad, I tell you one thing. The one stat I remember, guys, that 2019, I bring up for East Carolina, the first year with Mike Houston. Matt, you remember we were talking about this, is the fact that I think we were number 19, but we were one of the youngest teams to play a lot of guys in 2019. Yeah. And the great thing about that is now, I remember Coach Houston talking that year, his first year, and we want to get old. It's kind of weird to hear that, right? Like if you're a pro team, you don't want to be old, you want to be young. We want to be old. We want to be old. Well, guess what? Now, guys, it's the year. Holton Ahlers has been there about 15 years. I would think a lot of fan bases probably think that. But COVID did us a favor in one respect, because it hurt us in the fact that, don't get me started on the NCAA. I think it's stupid the way they give people an extra year. Then we have to reduce our rosters. That's a whole nother show, as they say. So I made a lot of conversations in this offseason with Coach Houston and company. But for the fact that he gave us another year, Chad, watch out for, write this down for you guys. You got to see Mason Garcia. He's the backup for East Carolina. He's the future for East Carolina when it comes to the quarterback room. The dude is an absolute stud. He's got his academics. He's been working on that really hard. And also, he finally now knows the playbook. So if you want some intel on East Carolina, the one thing I will tell you is now Holton Ahlers can be Holton Ahlers because we have a really good backup now. So you probably already know him because we know you do your homework.
Yeah, I know the name.
But what frustrates me with the national media, not with you, Chad, is for East Carolina's sake, the very fact that they don't. You were talking about being lazy for Cincinnati for the national media. They're also very lazy for us. I know we haven't been very good in recent times, but if you look at our roster, if you look at the depth that East Carolina has now, I'm still upset with the media. I have a chip on my shoulder as a member of the media for East Carolina. To be picked 6, I think that we are like 3rd or 4th, and I'm being honest. Like, I really believe that we're in that ballpark. And I know that it may come down to some games. If we lose them, we could be 6th. But I thought that realistically, we're definitely 4th, and we might sneak into 3rd for the finish of the American Conference. There's no way we're 6th. But, hey, that's why we have to play the games, right?
Absolutely. And that little section of the American right there, 2 through 5, 3 through 5, I think everybody thinks Cincinnati and Houston are going to be probably right at the top. But UCF, SMU, ECU is really interesting because SMU might be the most talented overall of that bunch, but under Sonny Dykes, they were soft. If you punched them in the mouth, they didn't want to fight. Like if they could keep the game on the outside and pushing the ball down the field, they were dangerous. But the minute you squared them up, they didn't want any part of it. And does that change under their new coaching staff? And if not, I don't think that they're top 4 material. And then UCF, let's see what a Gus Malzahn team really looks like. He's got more of his style of quarterback right now. So we'll see there. But I've never been big on relying on transfers the way that Central Florida has been doing of late. Just because my general belief in the transfer portal is, for the most part, guys are there for a reason. Right? Like, is it talent? Is it didn't fit in the locker room? Is it, pain in the ass off the field? Like most of the guys that are in the portal, they're for one reason or another. It's for a reason. I think you run a great risk when you're introducing the way that they're doing 10, 12, 15 transfers that are just expected to walk in and be kind of handed starting spots. I think that's dangerous for a locker room. I mean, I know it's something SEC, that's something that's happened a little bit more there with guys transferring out and moving around. So maybe Malzahn knows how to handle it, but I'm curious to see how that fits as they're trying to win close games in October and November.
Chad, you talked about Ben Bryant. Tell us about some of those guys that Ben Bryant's going to have to distribute the ball to, whether it's in the passing game or just simply handing the ball off.
Wide receiver, they've got two guys at wide receiver on Bruce Feldman's freak list. One of them is Trey Tucker. The other is Tyler Scott. Trey Tucker's 5'9", 185, 190 pounds. Tyler Scott is about 5'9 and a half, and right about the same weight. Both of those guys ran 4.29s. And I watched both of them squat 600 pounds this summer.
Wow.
For two 5'9", shifty receivers with elite speed. Those two guys can take it to the house at any time. They added a Hawaii transfer named Nick Mardner. He's 6'6". He's a jump ball guy. Go get it in the corner of the end zone. He looks very funny standing next to the other two.
I bet he does.
And then they have two guys I think that are looking for an increased role this year. One is named Jaden Thompson. He's a 4-star out of Chicago. That I think 6'1" range, can play the boundary, can play the field. Good route runner, good athleticism. And then the other one's a kid named Chris Scott, who's an Ohio kid, probably the best hands on the team. And he's that quintessential great route runner, great hands, move the sticks kind of guy. Tight end, they've got Josh Wiley and Leonard Taylor. Both of them are going to be taken in the NFL draft next year. Wiley's 6'6", more of a stretch the field. Travis Kelce type. Lenny Taylor is kind of the inline, can block, but can also get out and hurt you as a pass catcher as well. And then at running back, they've got an LSU transfer, 4-star named Corey Keiner. That's a Cincinnati native. He wanted to come home after the coaching change at LSU, with video of Brian Kelly bumping and grinding on 17-year-olds. I think probably a lot of guys down there were looking for their exit strategy. But they've also got a young kid named Miles Montgomery that I think is a name to watch. He's from Florida. And then Ryan Montgomery and Charles McClellan are the two veteran guys that have, been around for a long time. So they're loaded at wide receiver, tight end, and running back. So if quarterback and offensive line are what they need to be, this can be a really explosive offense.
And, Chad, we both know it all starts up front. All the great teams have that great offensive line, the road graders up front. Talk to us a little bit about that O-line. How many starters are back, new faces, et cetera?
So every player that started in the Cotton Bowl is back on the offensive line.
Damn. I was hoping you wouldn't say that, Chad.
There has been a little bit of they got a new offensive line coach this offseason. So you know how that is. The guy comes in and sees things maybe a little bit differently. There is now he's on scholarship now, but he entered the program as a walk-on. He's a redshirt sophomore, so quickly rose up the ranks, and he has started the entire summer at right tackle, and his name's Joe Hubert. That allowed them to move first-team all-conference right tackle Dylan O'Quinn back inside to right guard, which was his best position. They've got a first-team all-conference center in Jake Renfro, who was a freshman All-American, one of the best centers in the country. Their left tackle, James Tunstall, has had an outstanding camp. He started his career at UConn, so probably a guy you're familiar with, Matt.
Okay, yep. I can't say I am, but that's just because I don't.
I'm kidding. And then at left guard, the incumbent, Jeremy Cooper, is being really challenged by a redshirt sophomore, Gavin Gerhardt, who is also the backup center. He had to spend all his time learning center last year, so he didn't get to really compete at guard. Now that he's got center down, they're giving him the opportunity to compete at left guard, and they're neck and neck in that starting spot at left guard. So the offensive line is going to be very good. And what that also means is now potentially you've got two starters that started in the Cotton Bowl and played well against Alabama as your backups, as your rotation on the offensive line. So They feel like they're in a really good spot. They really like what they've seen from their offensive line so far in camp. But yeah, if they're any better than having the 5 guys that took the field in the Cotton Bowl, people will say what they didn't stop Will Anderson. I don't think a brick wall could stop Will Anderson.
Very good point, Chad. As far as East Carolina, I want to let you know too. The one thing that Mike Houston's done a nice job is depth on offensive, defensive line. And so look out for the one area that Pirate fans and Pirate Nation talk a lot about is always, it's like every year, the offensive line. This is probably wouldn't you say, Matt, the best offensive line we've had in since 2014?
No doubt about it. I mean, you look at this offensive line on paper, it's finally at the point where I think Mike Houston wants it to be in year 4, Chad, from the perspective of, the size is finally there, the size is there, but as you know, we're talking about depth. That depth is so important because if you have 1 or 2 guys go down, which is really inevitable throughout the course of the season, you got to have that depth to rely on. And I think, we again, Mike Houston, year 4, he's done a really nice job building both lines and now putting us in a position where we can, run the ball on most teams that are on the schedule.
And you're looking at, by the way, Chad, 9 or 10 guys on both sides of the ball before. I mean, it was so bad. Matt can tell you, and you probably remember, we had basically, and when Houston took over, the cupboard was so bare. We had Matt, 3 D linemen that were legit when Houston took over.
We had 2 D linemen in Mike Houston's first year that were over 275 pounds. 2.
Yep.
It was
Tommy
that
Tuberville
bad.
didn't leave the cupboard stocked at any of the line spots really either. So that was, that is the hardest part. Like Luke Fickell talks all the time about, we want to be an offensive and defensive line driven program. And more so than anything, just because if you're not good there, you're going to get killed.
Yeah.
You just don't stand a chance against a good team. If you're not good at the point of attack, you're going to get pushed around. You're going to get bullied. Fickell worked hard. The offensive line is just now finally getting to that spot where it feels like it's more than they've been, I guess the way to put it, they've been good 5 or 6 guys, but they're just, you had that concern if something major happened, you were in trouble because the depth hadn't been developed there like it had been everywhere else. And I think they're finally getting to the point now where they feel pretty comfortable that the depth is there.
So, Chad, what is your expectations, and also maybe for the Bearcat fans? We know what it was like last year. We know how many guys you've lost on this year's team, but there's a lot of talent. Obviously, we know left for the Bearcats.
Sure.
What are your expectations this year for the team, or what do you think will happen?
I think this is a team that should play for an American Conference championship. Will they host it this year? I don't know. It's hard. Where does Houston lose? If they're as good as we think they should be, I'm not the biggest Holgorsen guy. I think there are some times that he maybe lets somebody outmaneuver him. If you look at his whole picture, but they don't play Central Florida. They don't play Cincinnati.
Right.
They've got, of the contenders, they've got the easiest schedule. But I think Cincinnati is better still than UCF. So that if you put Cincinnati back in the championship, I would say, here's how I kind of described this a couple weeks ago when the preseason polls and stuff were coming out. If I have to pick right now, I would pick Houston as the favorite because, like Holton Ahlers, Clayton Tune started playing quarterback for Houston in 2012.
I think at least 2012, Chad, no doubt.
That's why Desmond Ridder was so great for, you just knew Des was going to put you in a position to win.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And ECU's going to have that. Houston's going to have that. So, but if you're asking me who would I think is the favorite before the games are played, I would say Houston. If you ask me, who am I picking, a Luke Fickell team or a Dana Holgorsen team in December? I'm picking the Luke Fickell team.
Sure.
So that's kind of like where I'm hung up. Do I think they go into Arkansas and win? Probably not. I think if this was game 3 or game 4, I would feel a lot better about their chances to go in there. But with so many new guys, I mean, all it takes is in an environment like that, in a game like that against top 25 teams, if you let one guy break a coverage, that could potentially change the game and you lose. And I just don't know that they're that cohesive yet to the point where I think they're going to go into Arkansas. And I think it's going to be a great game. Arkansas has a veteran quarterback in KJ Jefferson. So I would probably, I don't know, Arkansas's giving 7.5. I think I would bet Cincinnati because I don't know that it's going to be more than a touchdown game. But I would probably pick Arkansas. So 11-1, 10-2, I think regular season, somewhere in there.
Hey guys, by the way, Matt, you got to come down. November 19th, Chad, is a huge game for East Carolina. Guess who we host? We host Houston, and we're going to upset Houston. We had him on the ropes last year. I'm telling you guys, mark it down. It's as our Arnie Spanier on Sport News Network used to say, it's an upset special. I'm telling you, Chad, I bet there's a lot of Bearcat fans that are going to be pulling for the Pirates on November 19th. What do you think, Matt?
Oh, no doubt about it. That's going to be a huge game, and so many big games late for us in November this year. And that one's definitely going to be, one that we circle on the calendar for sure. But so Chad, I guess just to kind of summarize, in my opinion, just talking with you tonight and learning more about Cincinnati, sounds to me like this is a team with a ton of talent. Obviously, a ton of talent. It might take a few weeks in the beginning of the season to put it all together because there are new pieces, but a very dangerous team as the season progresses. This is a team that's going to get better and better. Most likely. That's kind of what I'm taking from this interview tonight.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's a Luke Fickell team. They're going to be really good on defense.
Well prepared.
But I think offensively they can be a lot more dangerous than people realize just because they've got so much talent loaded at wide receiver, tight end, and running back that if they can get the offense humming, then this can be a team that really causes problems. I think everybody looked at last year and thought just, the defense is amazing, which they were, but the offense was the second best offense in Cincinnati program history. Like they were a top 15 offense in the country. It wasn't just that the defense was good. It was that they were going to get enough points offensively that you weren't going to be able to keep up. So, but do I think this is going to be a team that nobody's going to score more than 21 points against? Like, no, probably not. Like somebody will get hot and cause them some problems that they didn't expect. But I think they're going to potentially have the offense to overcome it, especially as the season goes on.
It's going to be great to see it. And Chad, I know we've gone very long with you, but it's always fun to talk football with you, sports. And we'll keep, obviously, that all is good. And tell everybody how they can follow your work at the Bearcat Journal, 24/7 Sports. I'm like Matt and Bubba and Kyle. We actually look at your work, obviously, being a part of Stephen Igo with Hoist the Colors, part of that family, with 27 Sports. How can they check out your work?
I'm all over the place now. You can find us at BearcatJournal.com. You can find us on Twitter at Chad Brendel at Bearcat Journal. Find us on YouTube, Bearcat Journal. Find us on Twitch, Bearcat Journal. Find us on Instagram, Bearcat Journal. Find us on TikTok, Bearcat Journal. We've started accounts everywhere. I'm going for world domination at this point.
There you go.
Sounds good. Appreciate you, brother, and love to have you back on soon.
Anytime. Just let me know, guys. You have a great show tonight. Thank you.
All right, too. Appreciate
Thanks
you.
a lot, Chad.
Bye-bye. Good night. Appreciate Chad very much for all he does for us. And obviously with Bearcat Journal right now, a guy that's been patiently waiting, and he told me that he's upset because we had stale pretzels, and he said we're supposed to be like better to him because he's one of the best guests that we have on all the time. One of our regulars, our favorites, Jeff Allen from Knightline Sports. Man, you're so awesome. Next time I promise to do better in the green room. I'll get you the better pretzels. Matt, I'm sorry I let you guys down. It was my turn to go to the store and stock up for Jeff, and I apologize, Jeff, for that.
Yeah, and at least you need to have some good IPAs in the green room too.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
We'll remember
No
that.
doubt about
Bubba, I'm sorry I let you down as well. Next time we'll do a better job. I thought the pretzels were okay. I guess I didn't read the expiration date, Matt. My bad. Jeff, let's talk about more than just pretzels. It's not the pretzel objective. It's actually the sports objective. In this case, college football. Jeff, are you like us? Is something about it, I guess, because we're getting further away from that god-awful 2020 COVID season, but I'm just fired up for college football. How are things down in, first of all, how are things in Orlando? How are things getting ready for UCF football? I know that place is the bounce house, man. You guys are going to be rocking.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's kind of neat because I just did my UCF roundtable on my Jeff Allen Sports Talk podcast, and each one of the guys said, "Oh yeah, we know it's football time when we get the invite from Jeff to come on the show," and that's kind of the way it feels like here with you guys. So it's like, yeah, we're amped, we're ready to go, and Knight fans are excited coming off of a big bowl win over the Florida Gators and a 9-win season. So there's a lot of pent-up energy ready to go.
And I'll tell you, they should be, Jeff. They really should be excited because, first of all, looking back at last year and what I consider to be a down year for UCF, you still win crazy? 9 games and a bowl game over Florida. So that's how far this program has come along. And, I'm actually a little bit different than most people when I look at the American Conference this year. I have Cincinnati number 1. I think they're the champ. Somebody's going to have to beat them. But I have UCF number 2. And Houston – everybody's kind of got Houston up there. I see them really in 4th or so. I'm not that big on Houston, but I am big on UCF as kind of a team that a lot of people aren't really talking about this year. And I think Gus Malzahn in year 2, I think he's worked the transfer portal like crazy to solidify some holes. Jeff, I think there's a lot of talent on this team at running back, especially wide receiver is loaded again. So I'm very high on what UCF has.
Yeah, and I think you should be. And it was interesting because I heard Chad's comments about the transfer portal, and it does cut both ways. I mean, you look at the aspect of, okay, coaches can use that now to get guys that fit their system. Players can go look for teams that the system would fit them. So I think that's what Gus Malzahn has done. I mean, we saw what Sonny Dykes did with the transfer portal at SMU to fortify his team. And I think Gus is kind of doing the same sort of thing here. And of course, the big transfer, John Rice Plumlee coming in and having a big quarterback battle in preseason where he ends up beating out the incumbent Mikey Keene, who did a great job as a freshman, considering the fact that true freshman, a great quarterback, and Dylan Gabriel goes down and he helps get them to 9 wins. So it was an interesting quarterback battle, but we know that Plumlee's the kind of quarterback that kind of fits the Gus system. And, a lot of comparison being made to, if this could be like Nick Marshall was at Auburn, that could be really good for the Knights.
And Jeff, you know how we feel about Malzahn. I mean, the Auburn people are just nuts. I'm not anti-Auburn, but they're absolutely crazy. The good news is for the Knights, you guys have a heck of a coach. I mean, you want to talk about who doesn't want to hang out with Jeff Allen and Mickey down in Orlando. You have, for me, when he talked about the transfer portal, let me tell you something. Matt and Bubba, Kyle, everybody in Pirate Nation, Jeff, you want an inside scoop. We were nervous about the wide receiver room. We had a situation with CJ Johnson. He didn't do anything bad or anything. It's just what I heard, it was a lot of like childish behavior kind of stuff. So we're like, oh my gosh, like we lose Tyler Snead. You don't have CJ Johnson, who was suspended from the team. The wide receiver room, to be honest, we thought was very thin. All of a sudden, Matt can tell you, he and I are not transfer portal guys, but Matt can say, we can all say that wide receiver room now, you get a great guy from Toledo. There's 3 or 4 guys now. And then you get CJ Johnson back. You've got some other guys that are coming up through the system. And all of a sudden, what we thought was the weakest link may be better than what we thought, Jeff.
Yeah, and I can point to an example last year for UCF. The transfer portal where they got Isaiah Bowser. And Isaiah Bowser was everything to the Knights football team. He has injury problems throughout the course of his career, both at Northwestern and at UCF. When he plays and he's healthy, he's and it makes the offense entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the Florida bowl game, he just kept pounding him, and we had those guys dragging their tongues in the fourth quarter, and they couldn't stop anything at that point. So yeah, if you are getting good finds in the transfer portal that can instantly elevate your team, it does make all the difference in the world right now. And it's I'm mixed emotions on the transfer portal. It's a little tough. I mean, the coaches have to continue to recruit their own players in the process, besides trying to get 4-star and 5-star recruits to come to their school. I think there needs to be some kind of balance to this at some point, because I agree, if the coaches leave, the players should have some opportunity to change their fortune too. But every year, that can be tough. Guys can go, play, 4 different schools throughout their college career.
Yeah, it's at the point where it's just gotten out of control, and it's just too easy for these guys to transfer. But since you mentioned Jeff, you mentioned Bowser. I'll tell you the combination there. You look at Bowser as kind of the power back. And then I believe it's Johnny Richardson who kind of comes in and is more of he's a smaller, shiftier back. And I really like that combination, because Bowser's the guy that can pound the rock in between the tackles and really wear the defense down. And then all of a sudden you bring in the change of pace who can damage you with his quick feet and his speed. So that is a very dangerous combination. Yes.
And, and Richardson kind of brings that little mold of, Adrian Killens and Otis Anderson, who played here. And then, and there's a lot of talk, RJ Harvey was having a great camp a year ago before he got hurt. Mark Anthony Richards, he had some big moments last season, helping the running game out. And he's a bigger back too. And he, was a transfer portal from Auburn. So Gus knew him, and the running back room, I think, is very strong for the Knights, and yeah, they will make their bones running the football. There is no question about that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you mentioned right now, you touched on the quarterback, and obviously Gus Malzahn in year 2. You look at that stable of running backs, and then let's not forget about O'Keefe on the outside, who's as dangerous a receiver as there is in the American Conference.
I think you could say Ryan O'Keefe was the MVP of the team last year, because the games that Bowser did not play, besides using him in the passing game, they ran him a lot of jet sweeps and the short bubble passes, and he would break those off for big gains. And yeah, I expect even bigger things out of him this season. He's going to be the number one guy at the wide receiver position for the Knights. And then you look at Gerard Baker is a redshirt junior. He's getting a lot of talk. Amari Johnson, of course, is injured. We are hoping for some of his senior leadership. It'll be interesting to see what happens when he comes back. And then, yeah, it's definitely a wide receiver group that is not as experienced as last year, but I think they got a lot of talent and a lot of speed.
No doubt. So with the offense looking good, I know that you said, like us, with having a quarterback like in his system, with the line play, with Coach Houston was talking about last week, as Matt knows and Bubba, this is the best offensive line and defensive line the Pirates have. He said, I thought about you guys, Jeff, because you in Cincinnati, because he was talking about, we finally look like an American team. And I was thinking about you guys in Cincinnati. It was like, you see a little bit with Houston. They've got athletes, but when you look at Central Florida, for me and Houston, and Cincinnati, those are the two schools that I think athlete-wise, it's like a wow factor. And I'm not just saying that because you're a friend and you're on the show. That's sincerely how I feel. And now you're starting to see guys on the offensive line for us. And it's a fair comparison, because you want to, if you like, when Ric Flair said, in order to be the man, you got to beat the man. Well, the man's probably this year Cincinnati. And by the way, I agree. with Matt wholeheartedly. I think UCF is like Rodney Dangerfield this year. They're getting no respect. And the Pirates are similarly no respect at number 6, Jeff. I really believe, like I was telling him, that you guys are way up there. And I think I'm just curious, maybe this is, and I'm not trying to be hating on, I don't hate Houston, so don't get me wrong, but I agree with Matt. Are they overrated? Or, they have talent, but when the chips are down, I mean, we had them on the ropes. East Carolina, if you're the number 6 team, we had them on the ropes last year. Last year was last year, but I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm not really high on Houston. Maybe I should, but I agree. And I think UCF as a team, and I tell you the most improved team, and we've already heard from Runny and Goalie last week, but I think USF, another improved team this year to watch out for. I know that's not an AAC talk, but I really believe that UCF is watch out for the Knights, because you've got a great coach, a lot of great athletes. And I think also Cincinnati's lost a lot. So like we were talking about before, how did they respond? Would they have talent? But you also need experience that they had last year. And UCF, we'll see. But am I wrong on that, Jeff?
I think the Knights are up there. I think Houston, I think they might have been a year ahead of schedule last year. It would be interesting to see what they do. I still think they're in the upper 4, and certainly a team that will be tough to contend with. But as far as the Knights go, I mean, I think most of the people here, they want to see them compete for the conference championship again, and I think it's a realistic expectation. Expectations in the past here have been very grandiose at times, but this year I think there's a good opportunity for them to compete for the conference crown.
Yeah, and Jeff, just stepping away from the personnel for a minute on the team, I pulled up the schedule, Jeff, and the opener, South Carolina State, I'm going to chalk that up as an easy win right now. But then you look at 2 of the next 4. Okay, so September 9th against Louisville, then Florida Atlantic, and then September 24th against Georgia Tech. So I think Louisville, obviously from a talent standpoint, a big test early.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to be a game that's going to be off the charts. It was a nail biter last season when we lost to the Cardinals. We'll get them in Orlando this time around, which will definitely be a big help. But yeah, you look at that gauntlet, through the month of September, Louisville, a sort of a road home game for us at Florida Atlantic, because we always draw well within the state. When we go visit there, Georgia Tech will be an interesting battle, and then we're going to open conference play with SMU. So, there's certainly some hurdles in the early part of the season coming down to that. I think the Louisville game will tell us a lot about where the Knights are.
Yeah, no doubt. And do you only leave the state of Florida twice, Jeff? Am I saying this correctly? Is that? I'm trying to remember if that is exactly right, but yeah, I think we only leave. Yeah, Memphis and Tulane are the only games, and East Carolina. So there'll be 3 times. 3 times out of the state. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not to cut you off there, Dave. That just kind of jumped out at me when I saw that. I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's a pretty favorable schedule right there.
Yeah, from a travel standpoint, yeah, that's a huge bonus. Because Florida Atlantic's not that far away. When we play at South Florida, that's 90 minutes away. And we like to call their stadium our second home stadium, because I think we've won there more in the last few years than South Florida actually has.
Oh man, Bubba, I know that you're going to. Johnny Robertson had a comment. I'm going to pitch it to you.
Yeah, Jeff. Certainly, we know where you're coming from regarding the UCF FAU thing, because East Carolina and Duke have been that way in years past, where we took over Wallace Wade Stadium on a few occasions. But Johnny Robertson chimes in on Facebook, pointing out that Houston benefits from not having to play Cincinnati or UCF.
Yeah, and that definitely helps their cause for being a contender. If you have two of the top teams not on your schedule, that certainly does play in their favor for sure.
No doubt, and we're really excited about this time with the conference. But just want to get your thoughts on leaving us. You're leaving us behind, Jeff. I mean, you're going to bright lights, big city. Jeff Allen, you're leaving us, man. Come on, why are you leaving us? You're going there, and how does it feel? I want to get your take on the fan base with the Knights. How are the fans feeling about moving to the Big 12?
Oh, as you would expect, they're over the moon over it. Why wouldn't you be? Your conference money is going to go up substantially.
Yep.
We're talking, maybe 5 times more than what they're getting now in the AAC. They get into and I hate the P5 G5 designation as much as anybody, but they are moving into that status, which helps them down the road. So they could, quote unquote, really have a path to the national championship. Now that path is going to be a little harder, I think. But you just look at that aspect of joining the Big 12. The Big 12 may still have more growth potential, depending on what happens with the Pac-12 and others. So yeah, it was a fortunate bounce. I know it's a big blow for the conference in the AAC because you lose your top 3 teams in football. 2 of those teams have been very good in basketball. In fact, that's one of the aspects I don't think enough people talk about with the move to the Big 12 is, boy, that's a huge step up for basketball. That's a tremendous basketball conference.
Yep, sure.
So yeah, there is a ton of excitement. I mean, I think if we could have that Big 12 on our patch on the jersey this year, the fans would go nuts. But they gotta wait one more year for that.
No doubt,
Jeff, my friend, you're my friend, but I got to call you out for a second, Jeff. I gotta give you a hard time. What is with the Alabama shirt?
That's not an Alabama shirt. That's an Atlanta Braves shirt.
Ah, okay. All right. I can live with that.
Yeah.
I can live with that.
Yeah. No, there'd be, I'd have to be taking a dirt nap to wear an Alabama shirt.
All right, good. All right. I just
Check out that tomahawk in the background.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now I see. Okay. It's all coming together now, but I just, I just can't stand the Crimson Tide. So I had to just call that out, but
yeah, the Braves are fine. Yeah, you're right about that. It's the wrong A.
Yes.
So Jeff, quick thing on MLB, and then we'll let you go. What do you think about your Braves? Bubba, is a big Braves fan. So unfortunately, I don't think I have Major League Baseball this year because I pulled for the team in the nation's capital. Yeah, so tough times for me. But how are you feeling about your Braves?
Feeling really good right now. They, after losing 4 or 5 to the Mets in New York, they responded with a vengeance. They've only lost twice since then. They are playing great baseball right now. The pitching staff's in excellent shape, and that's even before potentially getting Mike Soroka back for the stretch run. And then, as tough it was to lose Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson is picking up where he left off. He's having a great season. Dansby Swanson and I think Austin Riley could definitely, he's probably in the vote for the MVP. If he doesn't win it, he's going to be close. So, lots of exciting things for the Braves. I finally got to make a trip there for the first time in several years. I went to the Angels series back in July, and it was a blast. It's great when your team has the championship banner. That's for sure.
No doubt about it. Jeff, before we let you go, how can people find out your work? And hopefully you won't be a stranger and come back on with us very soon during football season.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to come back as always. Always enjoy talking to you guys. So as far as following the Knights, you can check out at UCF_Knightline. It's the Knightline Sports Network, where we have our flagship podcast. And then, of course, I host the AAC Report. And you can also catch me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88. And I talk quite a bit of football during the season on my own podcast, which is called Jeff Allen Sports Talk. And you can find both the AAC Report, Jeff Allen Sports Talk, the Knightline podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. So
wait a minute. So are you gonna change the name of the AAC Report? Is it gonna be the Big 12 Report? Or are you gonna stay with us and be humble and kind with us?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm in a contract season, so we'll have to see how things play out this year. So
okay,
you never know.
Okay, all right.
People are very dangerous in a contract year, Jeff.
Yeah,
so
that's
Jeff, thanks so much, brother. Appreciate you very much. Appreciate the patience, and I promise next time in the green room, I'll let Matt buy the pretzels because obviously I don't have the Midas touch like he does.
And IPAs too. We'll stock up the IPAs, right?
Yeah.
Outstanding, gentlemen. Always appreciate it. Thank
Have
you.
a good one, brother. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jeff. Take care. Take care.
Jeff is always good to us. I love that guy. And hey, Bubba, Matt, we got a new guest. In fact, very excited to have on with us right now from the Memphis Flyer, Memphis Magazine. And that would be Frank Murtaugh. Frank, thank you so much for making your debut. Thanks for the patience tonight. As we've had, you're the third great guest. You're like if you're playing baseball, you'll be in the lineup. You'll be the third batter here, so you can knock in a few runs here. RBI.
Well, let me tell you, I played a lot of baseball in my youth, and I very seldom batted third. So I'll take the spot today. And let me start by saying I love the title of this program, the Sports Objective. I feel like we're on a mission.
Hey, it sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and by the way, Matt, one of the cities I don't only know if I've ever shared this. Bubba's been, and you've been because you played in Liberty Bulls. But I have never been to Memphis. It's one of my bucket lists. I love the blues. I love Memphis. I love wrestling. So Jerry the King Lawler. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on about how much I love. I know Bill Street will be like my cup of tea. So one of these days, Frank will have to come out there, and Matt's like my bodyguard. He's like my handler to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah.
And so we'll go there.
I moved here 31 years ago, Dave, and it's my father grew up here. I had family roots, but it is one of the most distinctive cities on the planet. And I tell that to people whether they're from near or far. So the first time you come, it'll make an impression on you. I think one you'll carry home.
Well, people probably know on the podcast, but I'm a huge Elvis fan, and people I think are shocked to know that I've never been to Graceland, but that's one of my speaking of bucket lists, that's one of the reasons I've mentioned to come to Memphis. And the barbecue.
Yeah, I know you saw the movie this year. This is the year to come. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I sure did. It was a great. In fact, I need to buy it on. Got paid today, so now, Matt, I can buy it. You can actually buy the movie for $25.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you guys, just to jump in and not to veer off football, but since we mentioned Graceland, I had an opportunity to visit Graceland, and I honestly, I'll be honest, I was not excited about it. I thought I was going to be bored out of my mind. Not a particularly big Elvis guy. I had a blast. I thought it was very cool, very interesting. If you're in Memphis, I definitely recommend taking in Graceland. Whether you're an Elvis fan or not, it's just an interesting place to see. So that and the food in Memphis is second to none.
Yeah, Frank, I was going to ask you to put you on the spot here on the Sports Objective. We always talk about Eastern North Carolina barbecue, and I love people say, what kind of barbecue do you like? And I said all of them. That Memphis barbecue, what's your favorite place in Memphis when we come there?
Man, the barbecue shop on Madison is one of the, I wouldn't call it a hidden gem, but it's one of the favorites that's not the Rendezvous or not Corky, as some of the names that you hear from average travel guide. The barbecue shop's great. Tops Barbecue. Tops has been here for 50 years. It's where I'll go just to get a barbecue sandwich, and they can do the ribs right too. You can't go wrong. I mean, you can almost blindfold yourself and stumble into a good barbecue joint down here. But the barbecue shop on Madison would be where I'd recommend if you need somewhere new.
You probably can tell that I love Matt's in very good shape, and so is Bubba. I'm the guy that loves to eat food, so I'm a foodie. And one of these days I'll build my home gym and look like Semenza and Rosenbaum. But anyway, Frank, let's talk football before I gain another 5 pounds.
Yeah.
And Memphis, we obviously love having you guys in the conference with us for obviously football and basketball, baseball. You guys are a great conference mate. Let's talk about Memphis and talk about this year. with a football program. How are things been for fall camp?
Yeah, it's a big year for Ryan Silverfield, guys. This is his third season. I would go so far as to say I don't think there is a head coach in the history of college football whose career started quite the way Ryan Silverfield's had. His first game on the sideline was the biggest game in the program's history, the 2019 Cotton Bowl. And 3 months later, he's coaching under pandemic conditions and dealing with what we all had to throughout 2020. So his first full season, there are, no fans in the stands. There are, COVID protocols with his players. It was, not the kind of challenge you draw up as you're looking at your, building your resume as a rising college football coach. I think Ryan right now is just embracing a closer version of normality than he's known as a head coach. And, we've got NILs now and the transfer portal, and the job of a head football coach is very different than it was when he got into the profession, 20 plus years ago. But I think this is going to be an important test for him because, recent standards here in Memphis, 6-6 isn't good enough. And Ryan will be the first one to tell you that. He told me that when we sat down a couple of weeks ago. So is a corner going to be turned this fall? We're going to have to see. And it's going to happen soon. Not only with the opener at Mississippi State, but that second game is a league game at Navy. It's a big early test.
Hey, Frank, I had a non-football question, but it's related to the stadium. I know there's upgrades to the Liberty Bowl. Matt played there. Bubba's been there a million times. Talk about that, and then because I know we're going to dive into football, and I don't want to forget. We're going to talk X's and O's, and I don't want to forget about the upgrades. I was really happy for you guys that they're going to do upgrades for the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, it's really exciting. All I can share is what I've seen from the renderings, which I'm sure you guys have seen, and they're dramatic. I mean, it's a transformative approach to the stadium. I've written for years that the Liberty Bowl as it exists now is too large. It seats, upwards of 59,000. The Memphis program's not going to draw that, not on a weekly basis. But with the dramatic renovations they're doing, particularly to the suite levels, it's going to be a different viewing experience. And, when you can't build a stadium from scratch and you don't have the funds that a Big Ten or a SEC program has, you do what you can in modifying. And I think come 2025, that seems like a long way, but it really isn't. The athletes considering coming to Memphis and the fans considering going to watch football games at the Liberty Bowl are going to be in a different world than we are right now. And
quickly follow up, is that Bubba saying, is that $200 million project?
I don't want it. Yeah, I've forgotten the number. It's way up there. It's 9 figures. I'm not sure if it's 200, but it's far and away the largest venture this city has ever taken on with football. I mean, we got FedEx Forum, even before that, the Pyramid at much smaller scale. This is a huge sports endeavor for the city.
That's fantastic, Frank, and I'm happy to see it. I mean, you look at Memphis and East Carolina now. I mean, we are somewhat joined at the hip, right? In this, and as this college football world evolves almost on a monthly basis. So happy to see the program continue to elevate itself in that regard. But Frank, getting back to Coach Ryan Silverfield, and you mentioned this is a big year for him, right? And I'm just taking a look at Memphis. He's got to feel great about the fact that Seth Hennigan coming back. He was a true freshman last year, threw for 3,300 yards and 25 touchdowns as a true freshman. He's going to get better. So I would think that's going to help immensely.
A lot of us, if we didn't do it overtly, behind closed doors, we rolled our eyes last year when Seth was given the starting job for the opener, when Grant Gunnell went down. But from the get-go, he played precociously. He looked like a veteran by game 2. And if Seth, I think one of the critical variables this year is you tend to have growth between freshman year and sophomore year for any college quarterback. But can someone grow from the level that Seth Hennigan established? And with the numbers you just mentioned, Matt, can you make that growth, even incremental into your sophomore year? And if he does, if he does, the Tigers have, an all-conference candidate at the most important position on the field. Seth's a really bright guy. He's added about 10 pounds of muscle over the off season. He wants to be able to stand in the pocket a little longer, take a hit, still get the ball off. If he does make that progress, both physical and between the years, the Tigers are in good hands, at least behind center.
Yeah, I mean those are. I can't possibly say how difficult it is for a freshman in college to even get on the field. Okay, and then for a true freshman to come in and put up those kind of numbers, that is very impressive. And that is, there's not many guys that can do that. So I'm sure you got to feel great about the next 3 years at the quarterback position.
Yeah, he's level-headed, Matt, and he showed that from the get-go. And again, I take myself back to when I was, 18 years old. My gosh, a change in the wind pattern would excite me. And Seth just stays cool. He tossed a couple of pick sixes that were damaging to the team, and Ryan mentioned those to me, because the expectations are for him to be better. But he's, you feel like the program has sort of banked a good year from a college quarterback that normally would have been primarily just, running the scout team on the sideline, relaying signals. And Seth Hennigan has that banked and has a foundation that, you mentioned 3 years, Matt. If he's around 3 more years, wow, the type of quarterback we might see in 2024, that could be special.
Frank, that was one of you must have been reading my mind. We have Holton Ahlers at East Carolina, his 5th season, and we were joking early in the show. It feels like you with Chad Brendel of 24/7 Sports, the Bearcat Journal, like that Holton's been here like 12 years. The fact is, for him, he could be here for a few more years, and he could be like the Holton in like 3 years, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much to quarterback stability in college football these days, especially with the transfer portal as it exists. We kind of got spoiled around here having Paxton Lynch for 3 years. Wiley Ferguson was outstanding for 2, and then Brady White 3 years. Another very mature, very, very level-headed, wise, you might say, young quarterback. And Seth Hennigan seems to fall into that lineage.
No doubt. And by the way, Bubba did the research on it, and we'll put it up on the screen. The city of Memphis and the University of Memphis will be spending at least $150 million to renovate the home of the annual Liberty Bowl before the 25 season. They have renovation. This was back in May, but announced they could reach $200 million for the Simmons Bank Liberty Bowl. That was in USA Today on May the 12th of this year. So thank you, Bubba. He's we call him the Oz, Frank. He's like the Oz behind the scenes. He helps us out and does a great job with us on the show, but obviously does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So thank you, Bubba, our research staff there for clearing that up for us.
Oh yeah, research, they're the MVP. And look at those numbers and consider that's not building a new stadium. That's retrofitting, a facility that currently exists. So it's a major endeavor, and I want to sit down with some of the architects at some point and see how they get into the nitty-gritty. It's going to be exciting.
No doubt. And so when you have that, when you're talking NIL, you have the transfer portal. When you're talking with the stadium upgrades, can you talk about for Memphis, another sidebar for us we know about the stadium, but what other upgrades are you guys doing as far as facility wise?
Well, they have a brand new indoor facility. That's an easy answer. I was over there 2 or 3 weeks ago, and let me tell you, it has the largest big screen television I've ever had in front of my eyes. I asked the SID if I could come and watch the Super Bowl there next February. It is huge, but they've got video equipment in there and the bells and whistles that you're finding in major programs now. And again, just having that indoor field adjacent to the primary complexes is it's a recruiting tool. You got to have it, guys. Whether you're moving on, like your previous guest, Jeff, you're moving on to a Power 5 deal or trying to position yourself among the musical chairs to land there eventually.
In fact, Frank, we were talking and I know Matt mentioned earlier about East Carolina and Memphis being at the hip. Both of our programs are potential Power 5. I hate that term, but with you guys, with basketball, with all the sports you have, with the upgrades you're making. We're actually doing a campaign now, a $60 million campaign called Pirates United. We're going to have an indoor practice facility and stuff for basketball and stuff for baseball. And they have a adjacent weight room, a whole bunch of stuff there in addition to what we have now. But you have to keep up. And if you don't keep up, like you said, we're already left behind. But I think that Memphis, the city, and the University of Memphis is doing a nice job. And that's cool. I kind of gotten into the indoor practice facility, like just paying attention to a lot of schools that have them. And can you tell us, do you remember off the top of your head, it's okay if you don't, how much that costs? I think ours is probably going to cost us the $20 million figure.
I don't have that number, Dave.
Okay.
I do not. But, Ryan has emphasized from the beginning that, he understands that the landscape is changing. We all do. And what he wants to do, what he wants to prioritize is every last detail that would make Memphis attractive to a larger suitor. You mentioned the, Power Five and not wanting to utter those two words. What's discouraging is the feeling that it's becoming a Power Two. If we have UCLA and USC playing in the Big Ten now, for crying out loud, then with the SEC expanding and absorbing Texas and Oklahoma, at what point does it become about 30 teams, maybe 40, and then everybody else? Memphis and East Carolina have to at least be in the upper tier of those everybody else's for whatever comes out of it. Because I'm convinced what we'll see 10 years from now is not necessarily the Pac-12, Big 12, ACC, the Power Five we know now, even the American Athletic Conference. It's going to be something else. It'll be a different kind of a conglomeration of sorts. I keep going back to musical chairs. You want to be able to have a chair underneath you when you topple over.
That's a great analogy. As far as the Matt played in the 90s with Coach Logan, those great Liberty Bowl teams, and did a great job as a linebacker. Can we talk about defense for the Tigers? Because I know that's something that Matt will want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a defensive player on the cover of our preview issue next week, Quindel Johnson. He's a special talent here. He's a safety, a senior who well could have entered the NFL draft or transferred to greener pastures, but he stuck around. I asked him about it, and he says he wants to be as loyal to the program as it's been to him. So it's sort of an old school 1980s type attitude this young man brings to the field. And he's, I grew up watching the Dallas Cowboys, and I came to really enjoy watching Darren Woodson. Quindel Johnson is a version of Darren Woodson. He's he will deliver hits, hard, clean hits, be near the ball. He can make a pick, but he knows when a breakup is just as good. He's a special talent. So I think if you're looking at the Tiger defense, you work your way backward from the secondary with a guy like Quindel Johnson. And then, up front, they've got some fifth-year linemen, Marquavius Duckworth, Mardellis Duckworth, I'm sorry. The Tiger defense has to be better, better than it was last year. And I believe they scored 31 points a game and gave up 29. So that's how you end up 6-6. But with guys like Quindel Johnson, and the veterans they have, the Tiger defense, I think, can take a stride forward.
No doubt, Matt. I know with you with that defense, it's a big part. In fact, Frank, I think with East Carolina, we've been giving up so many explosion plays, X plays, if you want to call them, over the years, and in the Montgomery. In fact, Frank, the 2017 game, I talk about this all the time, is probably the lowest point of East Carolina football. You guys had a tremendous program. I'm not knocking Coach Norvell, and I have a lot of respect for Memphis, but I was so angry with that game because our players gave up. You guys could have scored 100 on us that day. And I said I would have fired Montgomery and he would have had to fly commercial. I was so upset that, in other words, if you lose to Memphis, it's not a embarrassment because you're a great program. It's the fact that we didn't even have a chance from the jump. We were not prepared, and that's what I was upset about. So I don't want to sound like that I'm anti-Memphis when I'm not at all. I'm glad to have you guys in the conference. I was just upset we were not competitive at all during that period.
Dave, let me tell you that's not healthy for anybody, a 70-13 football game. And we here in Memphis that go back even just a decade, experienced 2 years of that. When Larry Porter was here in 2010 and 11, it was ugly and games were over by halftime. And I'd like to look back and, I was, among the athletes here at that time. And I don't think they gave up, consciously, but when you're down 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 30 minutes into a football game, it doesn't become a competitive affair. And, week after week, that adds up. There's a cumulative effect to it. So I empathize there, Dave. I hope it looks like those days are behind you. I hope they're behind Memphis for good. We're approaching the 10th anniversary of Justin Fuente's arrival. That occurred to me today when I was looking over my notes, preparing for this conversation. And that changed everything when Justin arrived, and it was a 4-8 season, as I recall, in 2012. But that felt like at least 8-4. You could have inverted it, and once a program becomes competitive again, and you have a chance on Saturday, it's an entirely different culture.
Quick story, real fast. I had to walk across the parking lot that day. I don't know, Matt, if I told you this. And quickly, I was even not out of the car. It's 7-0. That day, that 2017 game, right? By the time that I got to the main lobby of the hospital I was working at the time, it was already 14-0 quick. And the matter of that walk is probably a 6 to 8 minute walk. So I'm just like, what in the world? And so that's one of those moments that I want to forget, but at the same time, it makes me proud knowing that the program is definitely in a lot better shape. At least now, starting last year, we had a lot of fourth quarter games where we're in every single game, and not where Matt Semenza was having a heart attack every week when we talked to him a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. I still have PTSD from that Memphis game. I think I blocked it from the memory banks altogether. Like I don't really remember anything specifically other than the score. But that's one of those things, man. It's just like that was a
burn the tape. Burn the tape.
And then conversely, Frank, you look at last year's game, and what a game. I mean, that was a hell of a game, a tough football game that, we were able to pull out in the end. But you talk about two teams that were kind of going back and forth there, which I think bodes well for another tough game this year.
Yeah. What a difference 4 years makes. There are times I consider those reporters and journalists who are following the likes of Alabama or Ohio State, and they're winning 10 games every year. I've sort of enjoyed, over my 20 years of following the Tigers, watching the growth and evolution of a program and that transition with multiple coaches involved. And I know you all are going through the same thing. And last year's game, down to overtime and a 2-point conversion attempt, you can't get tighter than that. And to consider that was only 4 years after the debacle you all were describing earlier, that speaks to hope, doesn't it? Hope and dream and optimism and all the positives that we're supposed to lean on in tough times.
Yeah. And, that's the one thing about, you look at the transfer portal in particular, and, you can knock the portal for a lot of different reasons, right? It's way too easy for kids to transfer. But from another perspective, Frank and Dave, as a coach, it allows you to rebuild your program faster than you ever could before. Because now if you have, let's just say you have holes on your offensive line, for example, instead of you have to go out and recruit a high school kid who's 17, possibly redshirt him, develop him for 2 or 3 years. Now, all of a sudden, you can go out and pick up a transfer from, I'm just throwing a school out there, a Mississippi State, a Virginia, who is game ready. So, you see that work both ways.
Absolutely. I'd give the other side of that coin, though, is a coach building that team. Who's going to be leaving his program at the end of the season, and how much notice are you going to get, and how do you prepare to fill those gaps? That's where my head spins when I consider what a football coach must go through with a roster so large. And in some respects, it's even harder for a basketball coach, because you lose 2 or 3 of your rotation players on a basketball roster. Your whole team has changed, and that's what's happened here with Penny Hardaway's club. But I hear what you're saying, Matt. It's it's a form of free agency in the world of college sports. And I think it's great for the young men and women who are able to take advantage of it. I've got a daughter in college. If she's tired of St. Louis University and wants to transfer, that's no one gets in the way, academically. Why should they when it comes to athletics? As far as building a program, though, it gives me the heebie-jeebies to consider, how you plot 1 year after the next.
Frank, we were having a great show. We're almost out of here, and you had to bring up basketball. We are like the Matt. Is it fair? And Frank, I know you follow the program some, but is it fair to call us like the Bad News Bears, the Chicago Cubs, not of recent times, but the old Chicago Cubs? For when it comes to ECU basketball, it's just the biggest enigma for me in the state of North Carolina with our basketball program. And we have a new coach, so we'll see how it goes. But man, you're not lying about when you want to call a roster overhaul. We have like, I guess, 6 guys stayed, but a lot of new faces on that basketball court, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
You're in an impossible spot being in North Carolina with those ACC powers and having to compete, even with Carolina on the jersey. I've given up scouting basketball preseason. I'm not going to try and venture with whatever writing I do before the Tiger season. I'm not going to try and tell you how strong Memphis is going to be. They have, Kendrick Davis, last year's Player of the Year from SMU, but trying to envision how the moving parts play together, how they fit in a rotation. Don't look at me. I'm going to be there at the exhibition games and start to, try and make some sense of it at that point. But it's a whole new world. It really is.
Frank, and just to kind of take it back to football here for a second, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts. I mean, when I look at the American Conference, I have to put Cincinnati number 1. I mentioned to our previous guest that in my opinion, I think UCF is going to really surprise people. I think they're loaded offensively, and I see them as the second best team in the league. But then after that, Frank, I think it's a crapshoot. I think you have a bunch of teams vying for that next spot, and I see Memphis as one of those teams. I see Houston. I see East Carolina, in that next spot. And quite honestly, I could see these teams knocking off UCF as well. So I wanted to get your thoughts on where you see Memphis fitting into that conference race.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun league, Matt. I've highlighted 3 games on my schedule, and they're all, the second half of the season. Houston here in Memphis, UCF here in Memphis, and then the last game of the season at SMU. I think those 3 games will tilt the season for the Tigers, with fair warning for that second game, which I've already mentioned, Navy, with that triple option that could, that can bite you in your sensitive parts real fast. But I agree with you, Matt. I think, the conference may be top heavy with Cincinnati. We're talking about a program that was in the playoff, last winter. Houston and UCF are strong year in, year out. But then, there are going to be some surprises. There always are. Injuries become a factor. That's why I'm a lot more prepared to project, say, at the end of September than I am at the end of August, once we have 3 or 4 games under our belts. But the AAC is a good league. It's a strong league. I know the commissioner has touted it as a Power 6. I look forward to the action. I'm going to miss the 3 programs leading. There's no getting around that. We're not winning that trade, with the 3 programs we're losing and the 6 we're gaining. But this 2022 season, it should be a lot of fun.
No question about it. By the way, we'll get on the screen. Johnny Gardner had a comment. He said to you, Frank, I've always thought that in my era that Memphis was a program that could blow up across all 3 big sports. I go back to Keith Lee, Andre Turner, Bakerfield, Holmes, saw Isaac Bruce and D. William make that step to the next level. And baseball has a great area if they could ever get it going.
Yeah, Coach Sean Rock, our baseball coach, has retired, and so there's a transition going on over at FedEx Park. But Memphis, first of all, is a big American city. It feels like a small town to something when you live here a while, but it's a major American city. So recruiting locally, it's right there in your breadbasket. A sleeping giant, I don't know. There was a time, guys, that I would have told you a 6-6 football record would be an astounding achievement. And here we are earlier in this chat. It'll be a disappointment now. So the programs are growing. The basketball program has disappointed, if anything, with all the hype behind Penny Hardaway, finally getting to the NCAA tournament in his 4th season. Memphis stands to contend, but it's going to take some, the right pieces in the right place, the right coaches making the right decisions, and enough money behind the programs. That's where it's done, guys.
Basketball question for you, Frank. We'll get a couple more and we'll let you go. What about Penny Hardaway? Is he in the hot seat? I know we were talking obviously football, but what about with Penny? I know how big that's a huge basketball town. Is he in trouble there in Memphis?
That's an interesting question. And when he was hired, I shared this thought. I'll share it with you right now. He will never be more popular than he was that day because a guy who grew up a local legend as a player, first in high school, then in college, then NBA. It's impossible once you take over a basketball program to meet every expectation in a city like Memphis. But I also wonder, related to that, I don't know what would define a hot seat for Penny Hardaway. I don't know how you fire or dismiss a Penny Hardaway in the city of Memphis. We're talking about, I'm not sure if you'll have someone like this in Greenville, but he could run for mayor. He could be the police commissioner. He could be running the barbecue shop. I mean, whatever Penny Hardaway chooses to do, he could do in this town. He chooses to coach the Tiger basketball program. So I wouldn't say he's in a hot seat. I think, expectations remain really high. Merely getting to the NCAA tournament, playing in the first or second round, that's not enough. And Penny is only added to that hunger for another Final Four.
Well, it's going to be great. In fact, we'll see how. My final question for you: what do you think about I know you said 6-6 is not good enough, but what's the expectation this year as far as Memphis fans, or what do you think the Tigers are going to? How will they finish record-wise?
Yeah, I stare at the schedule, and I want to say 8-4 would be a good season, guys. The Tigers, they've got to find some skill position players this year. They lost Calvin Austin. They've got a few guys at running back and receiver. If they find those players, those difference makers, and that's what the Tigers have had when they've finished in the top 25 recently. If they find those playmakers, maybe 9-3, but 8-4 I think would be a successful season, and get them into back into a bowl game. It was so anticlimactic last season when they got to the Hawaii Bowl barely, and then had it canceled with a COVID outbreak with the Hawaii program. So we want to get back in the postseason somehow, and I think they've got a roster to do it.
We know about that, don't we, Matt?
You beat me, Dave. I'd say, Frank, we can relate to that. We the day before our game against Boston College, they decided to, in my opinion, it was maybe the most cowardice move I've ever seen in college football. The way they backed out of that game, and and I'll be saying that for the next 20 years. About Boston College, they lost me respect, but so I can relate. It's a painful thing. We're hoping to get back to the postseason ourselves.
Yeah, the pandemic's been so uncomfortable and it lingers. And let's hope, first of all, let's hope we all get healthy as a human community. But let's get back to where football teams show up for football games, especially bowl games.
No doubt about it, Frank. We appreciate the time and you were generous with it. Talk about. How can we find your work? And certainly love to check it out, and definitely check out Memphis here. And one of these days, I might just even move into Graceland. I love Memphis so much.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to host any of you guys if you can make the trip. MemphisFlyer.com is the best place to find my Tiger coverage for football or basketball. I'm the managing editor at Memphis Magazine, so MemphisMagazine.com. And I wrote a novel published 5 years ago. I'd love to sell some books. It's called Trey's Company. It's a coming-of-age story set in the early 80s. You can find that on Amazon.
Cool. I love I'm an 80s kid, Frank, so love the music and that time period. You know what's great about the 80s, Frank, is I didn't have to pay bills. Today I got paid just handing money to the other dude. Like, it'd be nice to have a paycheck where you didn't have any bills. But anyway, I digress. Thank you so much, Frank. We appreciate you. We enjoyed it very much, and look forward to having you back on sometime very soon this season.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks a lot. All the best for the season ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Frank, because, during this podcast over the last 3+ years now, 4+ years rather, we've really struggled to develop a contact for Memphis, and we've had one for everyone else in the American. And shout out to Jeff Allen, our previous guest, for recommending yourself.
Jeff's a great guy, and I'm happy to be here and answer any Tiger questions you may have.
All right. Thank you so much, Frank. Appreciate you, and hope you have a great Labor Day early.
Thanks, fellas. Take care.
Have a good one. All right, bye. Appreciate Frank very much, and very patient. What a show. We had 3 great guests, so normally we don't have 3. But fellas, very excited about our new programming. I want to say that real quick before we get out of here. If you're just joining us, we have new programming starting on Monday, right, Bubba?
Yeah, and tonight was a bit of a longer show, and the reason we did have 3 guests is because Chad was scheduled to come on Tuesday night when it ended up just being Corey Glore. But Chad, very busy schedule as he covers the Bearcats, and it's kind of tough to match up our schedules at times. So that's the reason we went ahead and packed 3 guests into tonight's show. But like you're saying, next week is going to be unbelievable on the programming. We have headed Pirate Nation's way, as well as just other viewers, and because it certainly is not all East Carolina content. Plenty of Pirate talk, but in addition to that, we'll talk college football in general, starting with Absolute Empowerment on Monday night. And that conversation, I didn't take part in it, but I had the opportunity to, I was producing that show with Larry Shannon, Leonard Henry, and Mike Swift. I know Pirate fans and others will really enjoy that. And then you see it there on the screen, the Pirate preview, Pirate breakdown with Sutton Young, Sonny and Semenza, the Inside Slant, a weekly college football preview. And then on Friday, I'll be catching up with former East Carolina quarterback and the first Pirate quarterback to ever defeat NC State way back in 1971, and that is John Kazaza. Not only a great Pirate, but very blessed to be able to call him a friend. I guess I've known him for about 10 or 15 years now. Met him on the golf course in Thomasville, North Carolina, back during the Skip Holtz years. And then there you see the rest of the programming, the Pulse of Pirate Nation, which is a little quick 10-minute interview on game day, a lot of times with a football letter winner or a diehard Pirate fan. And then on Sunday, we'll take a look back at it all on the Pirate Football Playback, which is brought to you by L&K Custom Homes, the official title sponsor of that Pirate Football Playback. Appreciate Kevin Walker's support of the show.
And speaking of sponsors, I want to give a shout out to our good friends, Bubba, and that is Porky's Backyard Barbecue. If you get a chance, go by and see them. They're my dear friends, Mark and Terry Holiday. They're open at 11 to 8 every day. And I want to tell you something, Bubba. If you like barbecue chicken, you like anything they have great mac and cheese, a whole bunch of plethora. I don't even know how to spell that of sides. But anyway, you can give them a call, 252-661-0337. It's in the Roses and Tractor Supply Belk Shopping Center called Roanoke Landing in Williamston. Appreciate their support of the program. And something I have to get some football gloves, Bubba. And why not go to pgxgloves.com? I've got to do that tonight right after the show. And why not? We can give our good friend Mark Minikazi a shout out. Go to pgxgloves.com. They have the baseball gloves, which my son and daughter, they have the baseball and softball gloves there. How about the custom, the batting gloves? You have the football gloves, which I'm going to get. They have swag apparel, a lot of great T-shirts and stuff, and so much more. And they have that promo code. Just put an ECU in the promo code, and you get 25% off. Mark has been awesome for the last couple of years. He's been amazing, and I appreciate Mark, his friendship. And I know, Bubba, you got a chance to see his baseball team, didn't you, before we get out of here?
I did. He's managing the Kentucky Wild Health Genomes, located there, one of 2 Atlantic League teams in Lexington, Kentucky, in that 10-team league. And I had the opportunity to see Chris Davis, who led the major leagues in home runs back in 2018 when he hit 48 for the Oakland Athletics. And that was nice to be able to see Kaz's club play against the High Point Rockers here, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago now.
That was awesome. And thanks again, Mark, for your support of the program. Great dude. And of course, third baseman, it was during the, let's see, that would be the Randy Mazie era, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah. So I thought that was right.
Kaz, I believe he was actually recruited some by the previous regime and with Coach LeClaire, but then he played from 03 to 05.
Okay.
And then he was drafted and decided to sign that pro contract after 05.
Well, thanks, Kaz, again. Thank you, Bubba, for a marathon show. But they were 3 great guests, and we didn't want to, because of the scheduling, like we're talking about Tuesday, Chad worked with us, and we had to put our schedules together, and so we didn't want to cheapen the interviews or shorten them too much, for sure. Thanks to our 3 great guests. Thank you, Matt. Want to give a shout-out to our brother Kyle, is under the weather, but he's working really hard to get off the injured list and come back and be a regular player for sure. Kyle, brother, we love you very much. And,
a little bit, but yeah, for sure. Again, a little bit.
And get well for sure. All right, we'll get out of here. Thank you so much for everybody. As always, we want to say good night and go Pirates.
I'm a pirate down to my soul, and I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode, from the sidelines down to the post. Put it down like not even close, all out to the last whistle blow. For the flag with the soul and car bones. Everybody stand up, get your hands up, let a team know that we got they back. This is our house, this is our town, our top, everyone not copy that. Everybody in the stands go bananas, scream loud, but they don't hold back. Every foot, every yard, every first down, every touchdown with the cannons blast. Get it on, get it all.